Welcome back to the KickNPost YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking fantasy football, a dynasty league we recently started up, Superflex, tiered PPR. We're going to be talking teams that will be doing well and teams that are probably going to be at the bottom of the table. Me, I'm winning the league, so no need to tune in to see who's in the championship. It's going to be me. But without further ado, let's hop into this one. So as we get into it, we're going to talk about the roster builds. We're doing a Dynasty Superflex League. We're talking tiered PPR, so 1.5 points per tight end reception, 1 point per wide receiver reception, 0.5 points per running back reception, but running backs are getting 0.25 points per rushing attempt. We're going to be doing 6 points per passing touchdown, and this is an inaugural Dynasty League, so this is a startup. And we decided to throw the rookies in the draft because I wanted to get a vibe of how people valued their rookies. Coming into this, we have players that aren't too familiar with Dynasty, but we also have players who've been playing Dynasty for over 4 years in this league, so a good mix. The players who haven't really played Dynasty for that long are redraft specialists, are guys that have played fantasy football before, or people who are pretty in tune with the sport, so they at least know the players pretty well, right? Or they discuss fantasy a lot with us also. But we'll start this off by going into the first team of the draft, the 101. We're talking Mr. Bobby Woods with, in my opinion, a great start with the first 5 rounds. We're looking at Josh Allen at the 1-1. Great pick. I think everybody's 1-1 in Dynasty, Superflex. Definitely the best quarterback for fantasy at the moment. Great offense, fairly young, dual threat quarterback, has everything you're looking for. Great passer. So no big surprise there. CD at the 212. Without question, the number 1 wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, who are still a pass-heavy offense. Great pick out there. Super young. Stayed young with Jalen Waddle at the 3-1. A little bit of target competition in Miami, but I feel like Waddle's going to get his regardless. High volume type of receiver. So his first 3 picks are off to a flying start, and in this kind of setting, I do like that he faded running back early. He didn't reach for the Mixons, the Cooks. He just kind of wrote it out, got his wide receivers early, and was able to come back and get Cam Akers at the 412, who I believe is going to be the workhorse for the Rams. We're looking at a backfield that has Kyron Williams dealing with a broken foot right now. Darrell Henderson, who recently got an injury in off-season training camp. So you're looking at Akers probably going into the season as the main healthy back on the roster. I believe in his talent and also the way that he healed coming off of that Achilles and still having to be an influential part of their playoff run. Speaks volumes, and he's super young. I think he's, 22 right now? Yeah, 22. So we're looking at, in Dynasty, 22-year-old back on one of the best offenses in the league. You can't really go wrong there. And for him to start his running back core with that guy at the 412, solid pickup. And then we go Tua at the 5-1, so he completes his Superflex, right? Going to be starting 2 quarterbacks. Tua is a high ceiling if he hits, right? The floor is kind of mid, but his ceiling could be astronomical with all the offensive weapons they added there, trying to fix that offensive line. We've seen Tua throw the deep ball pretty well in Bama, but we're yet to see that side of his game in the NFL. But we're hoping with the coaching change and the weapons added, he'll be able to get unleashed a little bit more. So we're feeling Tua at the 5-1 for sure. He traded with me. I have Nick's picks. Nick has my picks, so that'll get a little bit confusing. But yes, he traded with me to get the 5-11, and he went ahead and got Kenneth Walker, which in my opinion at the time was a bit of a reach. But we're going into the Seattle team. Shoddy quarterback play. Chris Carson is probably retiring. We see the injuries going through that neck injury. There's no way he's going to be playing running back at a high level with all the screws in his neck and the fusion in his neck. I feel like we're 2 hits away from a Chris Carson retirement. And outside of that, he's just not going to be the same efficient downhill runner. And as of last week, we're dealing with Rashad Penny already having soft tissue injuries in training camp. So Kenneth Walker could skyrocket up the depth chart. So at the 5'11" to get possibly another full-time starter After waiting on running back. First six picks of the draft now, he's killed it in my opinion. I've been growing a little bit in terms of opportunity on James Cook. I was a little bit down on him. I felt like he was very much similar mold of a Devin Singletary, just a little bit more talented after the catch. I didn't see him as a between the tackles runner, but the more I've done research and the more I've looked into how Buffalo probably is going to run their offense with him, I've become more of a fan of James Cook. At the 7-11, I still am a little bit questionable if I'd go that route, right? But to make sure you get a second running back for sure, a third running back for sure, in an offense that's going to be scoring a lot of points, he could be involved. And even though it's 0.5 catches per reception, 0.5 points per reception, I feel like there'll be enough valuable touches for a guy like James Cook, especially red zone wise, for him to show that value. And at the 7-11, a rookie in a great offense, I'm warming up to the idea of James Cook. Maybe still not at the 7-11, but I don't think he would have got much past that. Get your guys. That's one of the main things I will say when it comes to playing dynasty football, especially in a startup. The best time to get your guys is in a dynasty startup. You don't want to have to pay an exorbitant price if they start going crazy at the beginning of the year or that year. If you like somebody, do your best to try to get them in that startup draft. That's my little suggestion to y'all if y'all are playing dynasty. Cortland Sutton, Mike Williams. They're the 8-12 and the 9-1. I understand the appeal to a guy like Cortland Sutton. He's going to be playing with Russ. People are expecting him to be Russ's new Tyler Lockett. There's a lot to be seen. That offense has a lot of moving parts. You're looking at Jerry Jeudy possibly being the target leader in that offense. When both of them have been on the field in the past, Jerry Jeudy has been the more dominant receiver. I know Cortland Sutton's about to be 2 years removed from that ACL injury. Maybe he'll have a little bit more confidence playing with a better quarterback. And we saw Mike Williams go nuclear the beginning of last year, but kind of fade at the ending of the year, right? But again, another wide receiver tied to a great offense. We have an aging Keenan Allen, and Justin Herbert's ascending. So if there's ever a time to acquire weapons playing with those quarterbacks at the 9-1 for a guy who at the beginning of the season was a top 5 wide receiver scoring-wise, I think he was a top 5 wide receiver for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. If he could repeat that, that's already a return on investment at the 9-1. Then we get a little bit of trigger happy with the rookies. And this is where I feel like having them included in the startup draft, you kind of see how that could be a little bit of an issue. Granted, you do have to put these guys on your taxi squad. So if you completely went veterans, you would have to drop a few. So I get it. But Trey McBride, great tight end prospect for this draft. Probably the best tight end prospect in this draft. He's able to get him at the 11-1. And to protect that investment, he got Zach Ertz at the 14-12. So no matter who's going to be the starting tight end in Arizona, he'll have him involved on his roster. Great decision right there. I love the Zamir White pick. I love the TDP pick. Kyron Williams, not too big a fan of. Of course, his draft was before he got injured. But seeing as Darrell Henderson hasn't been extended, it's very possible a guy like Kyron Williams will be the number 2 running back in L.A., if Darrell Henderson is pretty much told to go kick rocks after this season. Got a little bit of Calvin Austin down here. Isaiah Likely. There's 2 new tight end prospects out there in Baltimore. It's still Mark Andrews' job, but you never know what could happen with injuries. And obviously, we've seen a guy like Lamar Jackson be more comfortable passing to the tight end. So not a bad stash down here at 2012. The main argument I would give to this roster, and I feel like I'm going to have this criticism for a lot of the rosters going forward, is only 3 quarterbacks. And Sam Howell will most likely not be a starter. Probably will not start a game this season if Carson Wentz does what he's supposed to do. So you're looking at, by week 11, you're playing 1 quarterback. By week 7, you're playing 1 quarterback. And if we're looking at roster construction, right? So let's take a peek at roster construction. We're probably not going to have a good enough flex position to fill that. So let's go to Bobby Woods' team, right? Who's coming? Technically we have Mike Williams on the bench, but there's no way. I would be comfortable starting Mike Williams as my super flex, right? But that's a huge drop off from having a quarterback in that position, right? So my only criticism is I would have probably tried to target a Mitchell Trubisky. I think he'll have a few starting games over a guy like, I mean, I like Gainwell, but shoot, maybe a Mariota. He's probably going to end up starting, right? It gets real thin, but I would have probably tried to get my third quarterback a little bit earlier than, say, Mike Williams. But I think this roster is well constructed, especially after some of the chips have fallen in Seattle. And with James Cook looking like he's going to take over that backfield, I still don't think he's a between the tackles runner. He's going to get less usage on that front. But if they could get him like 6 to 7 targets a game, he will pay dividends, right? So very solid roster. Hunter the DJ. Justin Herbert at the 1-2. Again, ascending young quarterback. Great offense. Really showing out. Some people's preseason pick for MVP. Can't argue with it too much. And then we go to the 2-11, Breece Hall. And some will say, hey, we're kind of reaching for a guy like that. Breece Hall above Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall above Joe Mixon. Breece Hall above Chubb. Dobbins. Breece Hall above Barkley. But what you're looking at is a prospect that's getting referred to as Jonathan Taylor type athleticism. And if you're going to get your running back one for the future and you see him as being a Jonathan Taylor type who went at the 1-8 in this draft, you have to draft him here. You have to pay that price up front because there is no way he makes it back around to you. Possibly at the 3-2, he probably doesn't make it back around because I know Bobby Woods is a pretty big Breece Hall fan as well. That's part of knowing who you're drafting with as well. I could see Bobby Woods skipping out on one of those 2 wide receivers if Breece Hall made it back around, right? So it's knowing who you're drafting with and knowing that sometimes you have to pay a premium on these rookies because if Breece Hall takes off, you're going to have to pay way more than a 2-11 is worth to get him on your roster, right? So we come back around Deebo Samuel at the 3-2. Here's where things get a little bit tricky for me. I'm a huge Deebo fan. Love Deebo, right? But what will his usage be and how long will he be with the Niners? I believe Deebo still not signing an extension with the Niners. Them still trying to work that out. If he ends up in a different opportunity, I don't see him being the same type of player. And that's the type of things I look for in Dynasty as well, is how well will somebody's game translate to a different type of offense. Deebo's been tied to the Jets. Deebo's been tied to Dallas. I wouldn't mind him in Dallas because he'd have a guy like CD. Dak's a decent quarterback. But if you move him to the Jets, I don't think the production is as high. And before last season's explosion, you were getting Deebo in the 6th and 7th rounds of drafts. Right? So to pay a 3rd-round premium in a startup, I don't know if I'm too on board with that. But drafted him as a wide receiver 1. DK Metcalf, questionable decision at 4-5. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it questionable. But I will say, with the quarterback situation, they're probably going to go to the best receiver on the field, and that's definitely DK. He will still have his targets. It's just about valuable targets. Will he have red zone targets? Probably not. Will it be a good offense? Probably not. But will you still expect like probably an 8 to 9 reception game? I could see that. 8 to 9 receptions, maybe 85 yards. The ceiling's just really low with what that offense is going to be. Got trigger happy with the rookie pick again. We go Drake London over guys like Terry McLaurin, Chris Godwin, right? But the targets are plentiful in Atlanta. Great prospect. Top 10 prospect, if I'm not mistaken, to Atlanta. Only other person out there for target competition is Kyle Pitts. So, again, it's one of those things where you're paying a premium. If this guy turns out to be who they drafted him to be, you will not be picking him in the 5th round anymore. Dalton Schultz, one of my favorite tight end prospects. I think he went kind of early. I personally am still leaning with Pat Freiermuth, Dawson Knox, possibly over Dalton Schultz. But that offense is missing many targets, and he showed out last year. So, again, get your guy. If you're a huge Dalton Schultz fan, get your guy. Not the biggest Josh Jacobs fan myself, but that offense is going to be better. Red zone touches. It's all about valuable touches, and I feel like he'll be in the red zone a lot more often than not, and he has proven himself to be a good red zone back. He finds the end zone pretty well. So if he's able to stay healthy, that could be a pretty good pick as well. A.J. Dillon, this is drafting 2 years out, right? He's going to have his opportunity this year, but if Aaron Jones isn't re-signed, it's wheels up for a guy like A.J. Dillon, and you're looking at him possibly being in the top end of the draft next year, dynasty-wise, dynasty startups. So you're drafting him right here, in my opinion, at his floor. unless Aaron Jones resigns, and even then you'll still have good production out of a 7th-round running back. So I don't hate it. This roster in general, I'm looking at another issue. I don't see Mac Jones as a pretty solid fantasy quarterback. So for him to be your QB2 and then to not have any other QB than Mitchell Trubisky, who the possibility of him losing his job is out there, you might be stuck with one profitable quarterback on your roster when you have to go up against teams like Cade's. Well, I just tapped Joe Burrow. But Cade's, who will have at least 2 profitable quarterbacks on his roster and a very solid 3rd quarterback for at least a year. We don't know what that Malik Willis situation is looking like, but he wasn't taken on day 1 or day 2. Or was it late day 2? I think it was the 3rd round. So that hasn't really shown to be a prosperous pick for quarterbacks anyway. So Tannehill might have this job for at least the whole year. You're going to run into a team where could get possibly 60 to 70 points from the quarterback position, and you're looking at maximum of 45, in my opinion, with a guy like Mac Jones there. And then when Trubisky loses his job, which I think is entirely possible with them investing in their quarterback in the 1st round, no 3rd quarterback again. No 3rd quarterback again. You'll have to check the waivers or move to somebody who's drafted way more quarterbacks. And in my opinion, Superflex, quarterbacks are currency. So you're looking at a very shoddy decision here when things start to thin out quarterback-wise. I don't mind the depth plays. I feel like Christian Kirk's going to have volume at minimum, but it's a lot of guys I don't like in this back end of the draft. And Evan Ingram is not my favorite. Raheem Mostert's all based on health. If he's healthy, he'll be a steal. I like Shenault, but he hasn't really shown much. For a matter of fact, this team is pretty much the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I thought I was a Jags fan. He has, my goodness, Marvin Jones, Evan Ingram, Shenault, Christian Kirk. I don't know if I'd have this many Jags players if I were you, Hunter. I believe our offense will be a little bit better, but investing in a poor offense doesn't usually speak volumes to good fantasy. But we'll see. We'll see how the strategy turns out. I'm going to check out IMD Wavy's team. I'm going to be honest, we have a lot of issues here again. Patty Mahomes, great. We know what we'll get out of him. Kenny Pickett is your 2nd quarterback. Questionable. Will he start the year? We don't know. If he does, nice. If he doesn't, you're starting Jared Goff as your quarterback too. We've seen how that pans out, especially last year. Not a good, valuable fantasy asset. And then Jordan Love is riding the bench for at least a couple more years. But again, we're yet to see what he'll turn into. Lacking at the quarterback position. Eckler Chubb, that's a great running back core. He's hoping for a big breakout from Bateman. Without that, the wide receiver core is looking a little bit shoddy as well. A.J. Brown in a new situation. We don't know what Dotson's role will be on Washington, and I don't think they'll have good enough quarterback play to support 2 good wide receivers. Rashad White in Tampa Bay. Leonard Fournette came in a bit heavy, so we could see this being a good pick. James Robinson's dealing with an Achilles that he suffered at the later end of the year. I don't think we'll see James Robinson until like week 6, right? Noah Fant in a tough situation. Rondale Moore will get more targets, seeing that there's been a suspension to begin the year for a guy like D-Hop. So we'll see if the beginning of the year pans well for him. But if he doesn't, it's not going to get any better after week 6, right? So a lot of question marks on this roster as well. And even with 4 quarterbacks, he might only be having one solid fantasy asset for at least half the season at quarterback. I don't think that is a recipe for success. But I might be proven wrong, right? I know the 1-4 says me, but I traded back to the 1-11 because I wanted the back end of the draft. I will start off by saying, yes, I took Devontae Adams over Cooper Kupp. Do I regret it? No. I think Devontae Adams will have enough continuity built up from his college years with a guy like Derek Carr. And I think the volume will still be there. I think the offense will be a little bit better. Should I have gone Kupp? Possibly, seeing that the year that he had last year. If I was going for the win now mode like I planned to, Kupp probably would have been a better pick. But I'm not regretting it too much. I feel like I'll get a little bit more out of Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams at 29, 6'1", 215 pounds. We're looking at Cooper Kupp, who's 28, 6'2", 208. Right? He's taller than Devontae Adams? Sheesh, I would not have guessed that. Something doesn't sound right about that. That doesn't sound right, but okay. I feel like I have a lot more to get out of Devontae Adams in this situation, ironically, than a Cooper Kupp. But I guess I'll see if I'm proven wrong, right? Travis Kelce at the 2-2. I feel like this year he'll be the number one tight end, probably high-level wide receiver ranking if he was a wide receiver. It's Travis Kelce and rookies, right? It's Travis Kelce. You're looking at Sky Moore. You're looking at Juju, who just got traded there. You're looking at Miko Hardman. The rest of the options are not looking too elite. Patty is going to go where he's comfortable, and I feel like that's Travis Kelce, so we're looking at a high ceiling for Kelce, at least for this year. But he's 32. So it's a win-now pick. I know. It's a win-now pick. I go Stephon Diggs at the 311. He has the potential to be the wide receiver one, playing with a guy like Josh Allen. Had an underwhelming year last year, but he still has the potential to be wide receiver one in this setting. Russell Wilson in a new situation surrounded by weapons. I don't mind that. Aaron Rodgers, a little bit of a questionable pick by me, in my opinion. I feel like the volume won't be there for Aaron Rodgers anymore. Wide receiver options are kind of questionable. I feel like they're going to switch more to the run. So, not loving my pick here. If I could go back in time, I'd probably invest in a running back here. I'd probably take Zeke, or I'd probably take like a James Conner or something. Because Brady goes off the board right here way later, and I would have preferred to have Brady's 1 year to 2 year rental than Aaron Rodgers right here. So a little bit of regret for me right here. I could have definitely solidified my running back position a little bit more, right? But based on the trade I did for the 5'11", I was still able to acquire Elijah Mitchell and Leonard Fournette at the 6'12" and the 7'1". I also got the 10-12 in that deal, which led to me taking Kadarius Toney. Fournette came in a little bit heavy. I still feel like he's going to be quite a fantasy asset for this year. Elijah Mitchell, if he gets the job, that running offense in Ninerland, it's electric. I feel like he has the potential to be a top 10 running back as well. Kadarius Toney is more of a flyer. There's going to be a lot of targets out there in New York. We don't know who's going to get him, right? Kadarius Toney right now listed as wide receiver 1. We have Kenny Golladay back here, right? But if you look at all these options at wide receiver right now, it's a lot of question marks, right? But this doesn't even involve the rookies yet, does it? No, right? So a lot of question marks. So there'll be targets if he's able to keep his head down and work, right? Darnell Mooney at the 8-2. I took this more for trade bait. I'll be completely clear. I'll be completely honest, transparent with this one. I took it more for trade bait. I feel like there'll be a ton of volume out there in Chicago. I don't think the offense will be good at all, but he is the wide receiver 1 out there. And to get a wide receiver 1 at the 8-2, we'll take it. Dawson Knox, I feel like, is one of the steals of the draft. We're looking at a tight end, super young, great offense, great after catch, has a lot to be what word do I want to use? When it comes to target volume, I feel like he could assert himself more. I feel like we're struggling with a guy like Dawson Knox getting that volume, but there's so many weapons. Sorry, I accidentally hit the pause button. There's so many weapons out there that I understand why there's not a lot of volume for a guy like Dawson Knox, right? So we'll hop right back into the draft. This trio right here are just running backs for depth. Since I waited so long on running back, I decided to go and solidify a little bit more depth at the position. I feel like Ramondre Stevenson will have a role in the next year to 2 years. Maybe even this year in a split backfield with Damian Harris. I feel like Melvin Gordon re-signing with the Denver Broncos. That's going to be an electric offense. And they're going to be split at least 60-40. So if he's getting 40% of the work in a great offense, I'm good with that back here. And Ronald Jones, I feel like, is a solid runner at 24 years old, joining one of the better offenses in the league. He'll get his opportunities. So it's literally a depth play. I'm not going to go over every single pick. I think one of my favorite picks is if this man makes the roster, the talent that was there before he got all the medical issues with his back and before he had to, get cleared to play football again. The talent that was there is insane. And if he gets on the field with a guy like Mahomes, I feel like his wheel's up for a guy like Justin Ross. Clemson product, broke out at age 19, and for me to get him in the 20th round as a flyer, I'll take it. But I'm liking the team. And since drafting, Jarvis Landry has signed with the Saints, so I'm loving this pick even more. I feel like he'll assert himself in that role, in that slot role, where they've been missing that kind of help. He probably takes the field over Traquan Smith, So it's going to be him, him, Chris Olave, and a healthy Michael Thomas possibly, with Jameis, who likes to sling the ball around. So again, at the back end, at the 17th round, I'll take it. And as of now, I have 4 starting quarterbacks on my roster. So one of these guys could end up getting sold throughout the year. So I'm not hating my draft right now. Kade made no moves, took who was there, and as usual, I think did pretty well. We're looking at Joe Burrow, Dax, solidified his quarterbacks. Joe Mixon, Kamara. Kamara's a question mark with his legal issues, but outside of that, I feel like we still have a lot of juice left in Kamara as a running back. I will say past those 2 running backs, though, he's looking pretty scarce. Carter probably is going to be in more of like a breather role, maybe a 20% of the field, 20% of the snaps type of guy. Dallas Goedert's in a better offense now. Love the Pickens pick, but when you look at his running backs, Chris Carson's probably going to be out of the league, and Keyshawn Vaughn was looking like he was going to be elevated up the depth chart. Rashard White gets drafted there, so you're probably still looking at him being the running back 3. Let's see where they have him listed. See, he's not even listed as the running back 3. It's Leonard Fournette, Giovanni Bernard, who I thought got waived. Nope, he re-signed with the Bucs 2 months ago. So it's going to be Leonard Fournette, Giovanni Bernard, Rashad White, and then probably our boy here, Keyshawn Vaughn. So in terms of running backs, it's looking really scarce outside of these 2. Kyle Trask is more of a homer pick. I know that. Ryan Tannehill will be starting. Not a bad shout. But I still have question marks about positional play. I love Terry McLaurin. St. Brown's role, I don't think is solidified, but he showed that he could be a huge player in the NFL. Dominated, was like wide receiver 1 the last 6 weeks of the year, so a lot to be seen from a guy like St. Brown, but at the 6'8", I don't hate it. Keenan Allen still has a lot of juice left in the tank at the 7'5". Pretty solid roster. I'll probably rank them 1 to 10 when I'm done breaking down roster construction, but I'd have it up there. All right. So we're looking at Coach Steve's roster. We run into the same issue again. 2 starting quarterbacks. Desmond Ridder might start, but in all actuality, me and Coach Steve need to have a conversation of either me acquiring Desmond Ridder or him acquiring Marcus Mariota. I feel like it would be better for him acquiring Marcus Mariota, but he's gonna have to. I'm gonna have to take one of these positional players off of him, or I'll add something to Mariota to get one of the better positional players. Or I'm willing to trade for a rookie, but we'll have talks. I do love the Marquise Brown pick, especially after the suspension got announced. He has continuity with Kyler. He's gonna finally be in an offense that is pass heavy. I feel like this could be a huge thing for his career. And if you've been holding a Marquise Brown all these years, I think it's wheels up now finally for you guys who are patient with him. Alberto is more of a potential play, but Irv Smith is also a good potential play. He waited on tight end, but was able to get 2 guys who could possibly explode this year. We're looking at Minnesota allegedly being a more pass-heavy offense, and Alberto getting Russ, who we saw what he did with Jimmy Graham. We saw what he did with Nick Van Nett. We saw what he did with a guy like Will Dissly, right? Literally any tight end that kind of gets tethered to a guy like Russell Wilson has shown some scoring potential. So I like that. I like his draft. Mike Evans should have an electric start to the year. Elijah Moore's role is going to change, but that could be for the better. Travis Etienne is one of my favorite running back prospects in the 5th round. I wasn't able to get him in this draft. Personally, I knew if I was going to go quarterback right here at the 4th round pick, Etienne would make it back to me. DJ Moore is a wide receiver 1 at the 4.7 is still criminal. This man has been producing at an elite level since entering the league. Last year was wide receiver 18 because he died down at the back end of the year, but started the beginning of the year on a crazy pace, right? But I digress. And we're looking at Dalvin Cook, DeAndre Swift as the starting running backs. That's elite production right there. Depth-wise, past the 9th round, this is another situation where I feel like on bye weeks, who will he be starting instead of a quarterback, right? It looks like maybe a Marquise Brown. Let's check it out. We'll look at Coach Steve. There we go, Coach Steve. Yeah, it'll most likely be a Marquise Brown in that flex spot in the weeks where he doesn't have a quarterback. Again, I don't think that's a horrible play, but I would prefer to have another starting quarterback to fill that spot with. But again, I might be wrong. I'm talking a lot for somebody in the league, but we're gonna be checking this league week to week to see how these matchups are playing out, and I might be taking a lot of L's, right? So we'll see. Matt Avila at the 1-7 again made no moves like our boy Kade, but he took what fell to him. Jamar Chase, without question, the number one wide receiver in fantasy. I don't think anybody in next year's draft will eclipse him. Maybe Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, or Njigba. Yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, possibly, but I still think Chase is probably a better prospect overall. So probably the number one wide receiver for the next 5 years, locked in. Mark Andrews. If there wasn't a guy named Kyle Pitts, he'd probably be the number one tight end for the next 5 years in fantasy. So again, a lot of volume. Lamar Jackson's favorite target in an offense that really didn't add much wide receiver targets. Lost quite a few for Marquise Brown. So he has the potential to blow up this year. Jalen Hurts, even though going at the 3-7, his offense grew tremendously with the acquisition of A.J. Brown. So he has the potential to be the number one quarterback in fantasy as well. So I think first 3 picks of the draft to possibly have the number one position at all 3 positions here, there's not much of a better start than that, in my opinion. We got Deontay Johnson at the 4-6, number one option out there in Pittsburgh. A lot of question marks for who his quarterback will be, but I feel like the talent is there. And at this point, it doesn't matter who they have lined up back there. If there's any time to get the ball out, he'll probably be where the eyes go first, him and Pat Freiermuth. So not a bad pick there. Derek Carr, offense elevated. Already threw for a ton of yards last year. We could expect his touchdown scoring to go up quite a bit, adding a target like Devontae Adams, who is a red zone monster. So again, he's probably elevated to a top 5 or 6 quarterback at least for next year. So to have possibly 2 top 6 quarterbacks at the beginning of the draft, can't knock it. Right? And I'm saying top 6 when there's 6 quarterbacks that went up here, but all these quarterbacks have question marks. Kyler, love what he did last year and all the prior years, but he finished his quarterback 10 due to injury. Was on an electric pace at the start of the year, but he'll be without D-Hop for 6 weeks. We'll see how that affects him. Lamar coming off an injury-riddled year, not many weapons. Is going to be dependent to run a lot again. I don't think he's going to have an efficient offensive year, but if he's able to break out that MVP status, dual threat status, quarterback style, we'll see if he elevates himself back into that top 6 range. Joe Burrow, they should unleash him even further. I think he'll for sure be top 6. Patrick Mahomes, of course, top 6. Justin Herbert, of course, top 6. And Josh Allen, of course, top 6. But at minimum, you have a top 10 quarterback here at Derek Carr, so I don't mind it. And for waiting for running backs, Miles Sanders has the potential to possibly regain some value if he's able to have positive touchdown improvement. Had 0 touchdowns last year. Hopefully he could get some red zone touches, but this offense should be better. James Conner, it's all about health, but he's in a great offense, and not much was added to a guy to his backfield to give him much competition. It's him, Darrell Williams, Keontae Ingram, who's a 6th-round pick, and Benjamin, who's tiny. So don't hate that. Renfro's a good depth play. Brandon Cooks is one of my favorite fantasy players ever. Always in this back end of the draft, but always 1,000 yards, no matter which team, no matter who's the quarterback. I think he's been in the league for 7 years, and he's been in the league for 8 years, and in almost all 8 years, he's eclipsed 1,000 yards, right? So just model consistency from a guy like Brandon Cooks. I love this roster. I could rave about this roster for the whole vid, to be honest, but it is also lacking at the quarterback position. At least he has 3 starting quarterbacks, and in terms of running backs, I can't really talk much because I'm also liking that position. But with injury concern here, not sure if he's the starting running back there. You could be stuck with a Miles Sanders, Cordero Patterson type situation where one thing I like to sign up for is if you're not going to be in a good offense as a running back, you need to have volume. And Patterson's not going to have volume anymore from what it sounds like. It sounds like it's going to be like a Tyler Algier, maybe a Damian Williams, right? They're saying they don't even want to use Cordero Patterson as a running back anymore. So we'll see, right? Sneaky pick with Foreman. I feel like Foreman will get more touches than people think. I think they're going to try to use him as the thumper and reserve Christian McCaffrey to be a more target-heavy running back, right? But let's move on. Automatic. He made moves. He's all over the board. But Trey Lance, Matt Stafford. Trey Lance for the future, Matt Stafford for the now. Everything's shaping up to Trey Lance starting, and his potential is sky high. Great offense, great weapons. Dual threat athlete. Could really explode onto the scene in his second year of football. Matt Stafford, model consistency, older quarterback, but he'll do what he usually does. Christian McCaffrey at the 2-5, if he stays healthy, will win Auto the league. And I'll say that right now. If Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, the combination of Christian McCaffrey, Zeke with a bounce back possibly, Aaron Jones with tons of targets, seeing that there's no wide receivers out there, that trio will win him the league if all things hit right for him. I don't love the receiving core. Amari Cooper, we don't know who his quarterback will be right now. If it's Deshaun Watson, nice. Otherwise, we might be looking at a wash right here. Juju's in a great offense, but we still haven't seen a good year from Juju since him and Antonio Brown have been split up, right? And I don't think there's a wide receiver to push the boundaries like Antonio Brown did that could free up targets for Juju. So we have to see what that turns into. I'm still a fan of Brandon Ayuk. I know Otto's still a fan of Brandon Ayuk. He broke out a little bit at the back end of last year, and they said they want to maximize Brandon Ayuk's role. Let's see how that turns out. Went Garrett Wilson at the 5-4, elite prospect, signed with the Jets. We don't know what we're going to get out of him yet, but we're willing to see. He also drafted one of my favorite prospects of the draft, Khalil Shakir, so he knew that was the guy I was targeting as well, but you know Otto. And in true Otto fashion, Antonio Brown, if he plays, great. But you saw it right here. He said he's not playing in 2022. So question marks, right? Question marks. But I feel like Otto has a top end of a draft that if things hit right for these players, he's going to be in the mix for sure. MCW4H4. Made a couple moves at the back end. But Justin Jettas, nice. Cooper Kupp, we know what we're getting there. He might have been in huge trouble here with the legal proceedings that are happening. It is not looking good for his starting quarterback at the 3-9. And if he loses this player, he'll be trotting out Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, and Drew Lock as his quarterbacks. Minshew will be a backup. I'm sorry. You cannot win the league with Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, and Drew Lock as your quarterbacks. That's it. I'm calling it. If he gets suspended, it's time to start trying to acquire some picks or acquire younger talent, which he stayed young for the most part. Maybe sell Kupp, maybe sell Godwin. As soon as that suspension comes down, it's time to reset something, right? I love the Dameon Pierce pick. Defended it with the Marlon Mack pick. Huge fan of Gabe Davis. 10th round, I'm okay with that. But I've been hearing him go as high as 4th round in some leagues. That's egregious. Invested in Christian Watson. We'll see what that is. Very raw talent. Is supposed to be Aaron Rodgers' new target out there, but we have a lot to be seen here. I don't think Chris Godwin will start the year, but hopefully he comes back to his former self when he comes back from injury. Justin Fields, maybe there's a year 2 breakout in store, but I don't see weapons that will lend themselves to him breaking out. I'm a little bit soured on a Gibson, but at the 4-4, I could get down with that. He was going back end of the first, early second last year, so at the 4-4, I'm good with that. CEH could be in for a big bounce back year, and at the 7-9, I'm okay taking that risk. So a lot of value picks here, but I think he's taking himself out of the running by going Watson and then not getting like solid quarterbacks afterwards. Like if he's gonna go Watson, I think he should have gone Watson and then target like which quarterback got past him? Target like Tua. No? Yeah, he could have targeted a Tua. He could have targeted a Derek Carr, right? Get somebody to fill in and not go super young, guy who might lose his job, right? Just tough in my opinion, just tough. Kevin definitely has a pretty solid running back core, starting with Najee, Javonte Williams, that's youth. Tyreek Hill in Miami is questionable. We don't know what he's going to be, but at the 310, we'll take that risk. T. Higgins at the 4-3. Elite prospect. In my opinion, top 10 wide receiver in the league. He's just tied with another top 10 wide receiver in the league, right? So, can't say much there, but I love T. Higgins. David Montgomery at the 5'10", you got to take a running back of his opportunity there, but I don't know if he'll keep that job long term. Michael Pittman has a breakout opportunity playing with a guy like Matt Ryan, who I feel like is going to take a step back in terms of like arm strength, but I feel like in terms of accuracy and getting the ball out, he gets an improvement from a Carson Wentz. Tom Brady for the 1 to 2 year rental, great pick at the 7-10. Waited on quarterback, got somebody good, came right back with Kirk Cousins, who again model consistency. Is going to have the job for at least this year. Actually, they re-upped him, so he's going to have the job for a while. I love the Pat Freiermuth pick. I feel like he could be in for a big year this year. Not a fan of the Claypool pick. I feel like he's going to be out of his element, not going to be getting many deep passes. Unless they start to use him a little bit more like Debo, then it's going to be a rough year for a guy like Claypool. Pretty solid roster in general. Not a huge fan of the Byron Pringle pick, especially since he got arrested in a traffic accident. He might actually get waived, but I mean 23rd round pick, who cares? Decent. Like the Sony Michel pick as well. If Garoppolo starts, that would be a steal. Right? But again, we're struggling with the quarterback positions in a lot of these rounds, right? A lot of struggling with the quarterback position. But I mean, I guess that's what it is, a super flex. So the guys who took multiple, they'll be holding the keys. Again, quarterbacks are currency. Right? Looking at Nick, this is an elite start to the draft. Jackson, Henry, Kittle, Dobbins. My only thing is I'm worried about Henry's age and health, but for this year, I love this like core of players for the top 4. Treylon Burks at the 5'8" is a bit of a reach, but he's going to get a ton of targets out there in Tennessee. Jerry Jeudy has the opportunity to break out crazy this year. Olave is being touted as possibly the offensive rookie of the year. Devontae Smith, less competition. Not always going to have the number one, I'd say, cornerback on him every game. Probably a slightly different role, but at the 8-9, I'm still a fan. First round pick. I think they're going to be a little bit more pass heavy this year. I'm good with him right there. Michael Thomas, if he comes back to being what he's supposed to be, 9-4, you love that pick. Davis Mills is your second quarterback. I think that's not a bad shout. Get sketchy down here because these guys are probably not going to be playing very long. But Sam Darnold, his only competition is a third-round quarterback. So he could hold this position for a while if he plays well. Right? Maybe you could sell high on like a couple good games from Darnold to one of the teams that legit only have 2 players. Like an MCW 4HF, he might have to buy a guy like Sam Darnold just to stay afloat with his roster if Deshaun Watson gets suspended, right? Gronk, if he comes back, love that pick. Pretty balanced roster. And whenever OBJ signs, if it's somewhere with target volume, I love that pick as well. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of Nick's roster. And then we go to Mr. Say Less K, Mr. Win Predictions. We've been knocking those out like crazy. I'm going to leave a card on this one. JT, great pick. Kyle Pitts, tight end 1 in Dynasty, in my opinion. Trevor Lawrence, he did that despite me. Saquon Barkley, he also did that despite me. But I think Saquon Barkley at the 4-1 is going to be the steal of the draft. I am all on board the Saquon train. I think he's going to be back. Volume, passing volume. He said he's starting to feel strong on his knee again. It's over for these boys if he's really like that. Zach Wilson. He started off really young with the quarterbacks, man. If the year two step up from Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence fails, his team's gonna be in the dumpster as well, because Malik Willis might not play, and Baker Mayfield, actually, if he stays in Cleveland, probably will play. We're looking at Baker Mayfield probably still being the starter if they don't trade him, based on the allegations and what Deshaun Watson's going through. So that might be the steal of the draft. But he needs a year two step up from these two quarterbacks for this roster to really take flight. Hopkins will be out for 6 weeks, but everything is showing that he'll be okay when he comes back. Jameson Williams might start the year, but they say he's unlikely to be ready for training camp. That's not a good sign. Damian Harris, at least for one more year, will be in that Patriots offense that is very run heavy. That's solid for him. Hopkins gets suspended, so Chris decided, you know what? Let's go ahead and get Ridley as well. Keeps both suspended guys. Probably looking to punt this year then, if that's the case. But he went with some wide receiver talent here at Wan'Dale Robinson, who's pretty high on. Allen Robinson should take a step forward, playing with a good quarterback for the first time in his career. Corey Davis, wide receiver 3 in New York. I don't know, man. Not really a sexy pick. Thielen, if he's healthy, could give you some production to cover up for when Hopkins comes back. Then you move Thielen back to the bench. Pretty decent roster, but again, has some holes. Quarterbacks are really going to have to play well, in my opinion, for it to really take off, right? So we'll go to first week projections for this league. If we go to the league, you got me playing auto week 1. It's projected dub, but projections don't matter. But I really came here to kind of give my take on who I think has the best rosters, right? So obviously I think mine's one of the best, but I'm going to exclude myself from the rankings. I would go